All right, welcome to the Gnostic Warrior today. How you doing, Miguel?
Yeah, fine, thanks. It's great to be here with you.
Great, great. And usually what I like to do before we get into your great work is, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and your background for those people in the audience that might not know who you are?
Yes, well, who I am, I'm still trying to discover that. It's a lifetime process. But yeah, my background is basically professionally in industrial engineering. That's basically my formation. And then around, you can say 15 years ago, I decided to transmit knowledge based on pure personal experience about things that happened to me at different levels, and how to combine that with also the challenges that are happening right now in the world, which have to do a lot with radical economic, technological, and political aspects that sometimes we don't have much the opportunity to see them in the news, to put it that way. So basically, it's an effort for allowing to share something of my awareness that might help others to be aware of the same problematics. I would kind of summarize it that way.
Definitely, that's a great way to summarize it. And you grew up in Spain. That's where you live now.
Yeah, now I'm living in Spain. Yes, but
Okay.
I've moved kind of around. I lived in England, United States. I met people from many different cultures and different backgrounds, and I think that is all part of elements that you encounter in a path when you start asking questions. I think I started to ask questions very early in my life, and I think those questions led me to different paths and different people, different countries. But yeah, the whole question is to ask questions.
Definitely, definitely. And you've written several books, and you operate a website, The Solar Warrior. What do you feel is the major line as far as the message or the philosophy that you want to get across to your audience, and what are the main questions that you like to pursue?
Yes. Well, considering that my background is in engineering, I realized years ago, considering that I was a kid already when I was 11 or 10 who loved science, technique, technology in all its expressions, I realized that there are some aspects of industrial development that are challenging for the human condition, really, really challenging. So this really obliges the human condition to say, okay, so what can we resort to in order to face these challenges? What kind of, let's say, morals, principles, ethics, what kind of spiritual traditions we can even resort to find our freedom amidst these circumstances. So basically, my philosophical, you can say, path is to answer those questions of how to find freedom amidst changes like the industrial changes, the weather, climate changes, the changes imposed by urban industrial societies upon our freedoms. And that really took me to an immense, I would say, an immense accumulation of knowledge related to spiritual traditions, which have been rather forgotten, and that many philosophers have tried to recover. And I think right now it is very important to recover them as a framework for facing these challenges.
Sure. And what do you feel that we're facing in modern society right now? I often feel that, when I look back to the ancient traditions, we've ventured off far from there. And when I look at back then, I feel like they had more spiritual in everything that they did. It was that was more of a factor when they would do something, and the implications of, say, creating something or bringing something into the world. I think it would have been thought of more of than today, where it's just about, making the money or conquering or whatever it may be, and not the spiritual implications and what it's doing to us, humanity as a whole. And I think that we're seeing that now, the results of that. What do you feel?
Yes, that we've lost completely what is that understanding, that knowledge of how to transmit from generation to generation a series of ideas that can only be learned through personal experience, through gnosis. You don't believe anything, you just start with your own experience, and you try to drive all your knowledge from that. And we've lost that thread that allows from one generation to another generation to understand that the major challenges that the human condition faces from a spiritual perspective are the challenges imposed from the cosmos, which are the cosmos is an idea that has been changing constantly as the time passes by. And we tend to believe that today's cosmos is the same cosmos as the 14th, 15th century, but it is not. It's a completely different cosmos in the sense of how we relate to our experience. And now the problem is, as I see, we have lost the way or a framework, a cosmology of how to understand our experience, our everyday experience. And I'm not talking about extremely extraordinary questions about politics or things like that. I'm just talking about just things like how you handle your life.
Sure.
And and we talk about a lot of amazing things about politics and lots of things, but
Sure.
we have less and less capacity to even handle our dogs. So it's I think it's what was lost was that thread of transmission. Sure. of how to relate to the cosmos. This is a cosmology.
Do you believe that this is some type of maybe conspiracy from the archons or the powers that be, that one might say in the conspiracy realm, or is this something that is just the result of man pursuing selfish needs generation after generation and almost falling asleep? When I look at my father and growing up, he didn't pursue philosophy. He really didn't read books. He was I believe he was a little miserable in this world and didn't realize it. And he masked his pain with alcohol, and stuff like that. And he just toiled and eventually, died, not understanding anything, I feel, about life or, history or traditions or anything like that. And he would come home every day and essentially, bitch about his day, and drink his beer and his tequila or his whiskey or whatever. Actually, whiskey was his thing. And then he would fall asleep. And I would see that as a young child, literally every single day. He never did anything really to talk to me. And the transmissions that came to me were what I would deem not really good teachings, So in any event, I feel, and then here I am where I accidentally went down that path, started drinking, started doing drugs, started no philosophy, not reading books. And it had to take me going down to the darkness and the wrong path, the ways of the world, I sometimes call it. And, when in Christianity, they would say, the ways of the sinner. And I eventually came around and learned about philosophy and traditions. And I had no idea, and learned about, my ancestors. And there's this world that I fell in love with. And I started not liking this world. But in any event, when I analyzed my father, and then I analyze me and then what I did and my choices. And then I see like you, Miguel, and other people that I interview and I come into contact with. And, we're very rare, but in the same breath, we all have that choice to make, and our fathers chose not to that path and not transmit gnosis and ideas like, I try to do with my children. And they actually think I'm pretty crazy sometimes. It's because this world would have them think the opposite, So in any event, do you feel, Miguel, that, again, that's the long question. Do you feel this was some type of conspiracy to keep these spiritual traditions from us, and they kind of hid them and allowed us to pursue our selfish natures? And I talk about this in ancient Rome. They had a tradition called liber that they allowed the plebs and the slaves to follow, and it was the tradition of following your selfish needs, whatever you wanted to do. And that always led to people doing what we're doing today in modern society. It's just the modern way.
Yeah. So, well, I think it's you point out there two interesting things. On one hand, there is this disruption, intergenerational disruption of principles of life that serve to allow us how to cope with progressively learning by ourselves with the challenges that are really, really intense in our modern society. And many people, you're talking about your father, and I can tell a lot of other people related to me or people I know about who have also suffered a lot from radical challenges that they couldn't even expect. It was not in their genome to be prepared for that. And they didn't come up when they were born with a manual of instructions of how to deal with it. So that's the key. That manual of instructions was lost. It was completely lost. And then when you talk about the issue of conspiracies or elementary spiritual negative forces that are taking advantage through fear of that factor, well, and that's a consequence of that loss of the thread. And it's like saying, well, yeah, well, we know you've lost the thread, but at least start working hard, still develop all what we need of the human condition, and don't ask questions, don't even transmit any principles. You'll be slaves, because what we're going to do, we're going to kill you. No, you can be a good little slave for the development of this whatever thing has been built in this planet. But I would say that it's a consequence, not the cause. I would say that the influence, if you know the manual, if you have well, I don't think nobody is born with it, but if you have through experience and a good guidance, you have learned the manual, these spiritual forces can't do anything. They just can't do absolutely nothing against you. And they fear you. You don't fear them because you don't have any fear. Once you got the manual, the gnosis, the more they try to induce more and more fear in the world, trying to capture you. And that's what we're seeing lately. It's an attack, and it's not an attack in the population at large. It's an attack on those individuals who have the manual. Because once you got the manual of the instructions of how to cope with all this, but there's no way they can defeat you. There's no way, because that's the best of the human condition. That's something that they can never take from you. It's our history, our heritage. You can say that many generations before us worked hard to keep that for us. And what they're doing is they're making us be putting so much attention in what's happening immediately that we're losing our capacity to see what happened before. You were talking about Rome. Who cares about Rome today? I mean, you care about Rome, and other people care about the principles in Rome. But generally, it's like saying, well, Rome is just a film. There are some films in Hollywood about Rome. Oh, okay, good. That's it. So that's a perverse way of acting by these forces. But as I said, I think really, if considering a chicken and the egg issue, I mean, there was always conspiracies in history. There was always more powerful people, less powerful people. But I would say that here, right now, if there are negative forces dominating the world, it's because we've lost the best as humans we got. 7 billion people in the world, and it's hard to talk about humanity lately.
Yeah, definitely. And I was listening to you on the Techno-Social podcast, and there's some interesting ideas that float around. And one of the philosophies that I have is, people like you and I, and other people that I connect with and I reach out to or I resonate with, it always seems to be through these channels of ideas. And you had mentioned, I did Rome, and when we look at the ancient traditions, we're studying these ideas, these philosophy, these words, and I feel they activate something within us, like that spiritual gnosis. That's what I feel like happened to me when I started studying these traditions. I was like, wait a second, this is how I would want to teach my children, and how I wish I was taught as a young man how to live. And instead, I was never taught these, and it just activated this gnosis within me. But in any event, one of the things that they had talked about on the podcast was ontological interior design, and that was one of the things you guys were discussing. And what I wanted to bring up in regards to ontological interior design was that because we've been given those freedoms, and people, I believe these spiritual forces can control people, especially when they're not properly using their brain and their mind. And when we look at the world today, and the toxins that are going into people, whether it be the food, whether it be the prescription drugs or the alcohol, which of course has fungi and spirits in it. I have my theories there and so forth. But over time, that if people aren't using this apparatus, they're not really connecting their lower nature to their top nature, and combining it and pursuing philosophy and really thinking, they become almost like automatons. And when I look at the automaton, I think of these people almost being controlled by an interior force. So what I contend, and what I want to discuss with you a little bit and feel what you think about it is, what if these people are controlled by this dark force and not knowing it, almost like the Agent Smiths of the Matrix, and they think they're human, but they're not. And again, I don't mean to say anything bad about people out there, but there's a lot of people out there that are easily swayed. Like here in America, we had the elections with Trump and Biden, and they stormed the Senate House. Did you hear about that, Miguel?
Oh yeah, yeah, with especially the Capitol Hill stuff. Yeah,
sure. So when I look at that, I mean, how stupid could you be to do that? And everybody's on camera, but now they're busting everybody and so forth. But what I see is a bunch of people around me, and some are, I feel, well-meaning, and it's not that they're all evil or anything like that, but I feel different degrees of this where people are controlled by a dark force, and it's a selfish force. And what's interesting, when we go back to Rome, what I was discussing with Liber, that was actually a god, and it was a larvae god. And what I understand is that larvae is something within us, and that can control us. And so anyways, my research got into the second brain, and how this can become infected and start controlling this brain. And then I see how kind of the world works here in the United States, and the powers that be that are put into these different places. And I kind of look at who's there, and not exactly at everything they do, but of course I see that, but just who they are as people. And I feel that that's who's kind of running everything.
Yeah. It's a psychopathic. Yeah, it's a kind of a psychopathic structure of power.
Yeah. So my theory there, Miguel, is, in a nutshell, is that we're almost to the point of liberalism to the extreme where it's becoming nihilistic, suicidal with what we're doing. And so that when I go, why are we going down this route and all these things, and we're just throwing tradition, and all these rabid mobs are controlling, online and Twitter and everything. It's as if we're setting ourselves up for doom, for this interior thing to basically. So I feel there's two ontological designs going on. There's one here where there's philosophy being shared and the ancient traditions being connected through the filaments of time and through the internet. And then there's also the ones from below that are seeking to eat us. And we're in the light and they're in the dark. And if we let them continue, and I believe that what we've seen with society is that has been given control. And then what I hope is that there's an invisible force out there that changes it. Because, my theory is...
There is.
Yeah. So my hopes are that, God's kingdom, Plato's kingdom, Augustine talked about the city of God. When I look at all these traditions and I see all our ancestors and everything that's been given us to Miguel, it was to build a place that wasn't to be a living hell. It was to be a heaven where we didn't have to worry about the things that we're having now. And I feel that all this stuff could be easily cleaned up. Not saying we get rid of everything, technical and social and all these great things, but we bring in the traditions and we clean this up before we all eat ourselves and blow each other up because of this dark force. All right.
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting. All interesting things you point out. It's also interesting that, for example, your website is called Gnostic Warrior, and mine is Solar Warrior. So the concept of warrior is fundamental, and it has also been co-opted, unfortunately, by a lot of literature, cinema, as something evil, something criminal, it's like, oh, you like killing, something like that. No. The idea of war is how to handle power. Once you have power and you can harm someone, you can harm a whole society, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to harm society? Are you going to control society for your own egotistic intentions? Or are you going to make use of power for some positive reason that is good for the core, the heart of the human condition? So to be a warrior is to understand first the gnosis, the core, the soul, the solar aspect of the human being, and then fight for it. But what's happening today? Nobody is fighting for that. I'm going to say nobody, but
sure.
In general, what we like is that we have a means of power. For example, the press. For example, a technology. For example, an industry, or whatever that gives us power. And we say, okay, I have power. That's all great ego, But that has nothing to do with the tradition of the true warrior spirit. Like, for example, here, you can say the most Eastern case, the samurai, which it was completely a privilege to use a sword. You had to have moral, spiritual, all kind of knowledge, incredible principles of life to handle the sword. It wasn't just like, okay, So today we have a psychopathic structure of power in general, because the technocracy seems to... We don't have to talk even about global systems. We can talk even regional. You can see that in the corporations, even small, middle, kind of companies, you can see that there is something that drives psychopathic profiles to the top. Because they lack...
they're the ones like here in America that lead every industry. I mean, I'm a business guy, and I know, being around that they're the highest paid guys and the ones that will toe that line. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and because as you lack empathy to that gnosis, to that soul, you can't see it in you can't see it in others. So you say, okay, I'm gonna sack 300 workers and I'm gonna make a lot of money out of it. Okay, and you do it, and you promote it, and you can even be a politician. eventually. you know, so it's how it works, and these rules are, you have to see them by yourself. I mean, it's not something that definitely they're not going to tell you this in the news, but insiders can tell you that's how it goes. And the thing is, yes, so you were referring to the interesting thing about the connection of for example, in the United States, you were saying that people are just kind of zombie type,
Yeah. So, and they used to sometimes call them, back in the day in tradition, various writers would call them sometimes zombies or demons or parasites. Basically they're what they would say are humans that aren't really using this or philosophy, and they're just following their lower natures. They're selfish. They're not thinking about the big picture, leaving a better world for their children. It's those businessmen that you just talked about.
So I think that's a consequence. I have observed different cases, and I think that's a consequence of not fighting. First, of not recognizing the precious aspects of a human being first, and those who even recognize it, there are two groups there. Those who recognize it and don't fight to make it more and more alive, more and more valuable in society, and those who do recognize it but want to fight against it, or just say, oh, I can't keep up with what this flame demands, so what I'm going to do is try to forget that it exists, not only in me but in everyone else. So you don't fight, you accept comfort solutions, comfortable solutions. You become progressively, with time, call it maybe a decade, you become a psychopath. I mean, I don't think you have to be born a psychopath. You can become one in just a decade, And most people have chosen that comfortable path, and eventually, I've been. Some people asked me some time ago, say, is it reversible, the process? Can you really go back to that moment where you could see the human soul and fight for it? Once you're in a position of power and you have so many responsibilities, and not responsibilities, but so much demand for control on the part of all the people you are related to, all the institutions you are related to. I personally think that, I won't say you can't go back, that it's impossible, but it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult. Once you enter the path, I think it's like a downhill, constant downhill. It's very hard to get back. And talking about another thing that you mentioned about philosophy. Why are we interested in philosophy? I mean, I wanted to study eventually when I was 25. I wanted to start studying philosophy officially, but I said, no, this is not what I'm looking for, because I want. And it's curious because at that time, I entered in contact with some individuals who truly lived a philosophical way of life. And that doesn't mean to have a lot of ideas on philosophy. It's how you live. That's expressed in the Tao Te Ching of Lao Tse. It's not so much how much you know, how many books, it's your lifestyle. That's the whole thing. Your lifestyle, it's the only thing that counts.
Sure.
And we've lost the thread that allows us to understand that philosophy of life. Eventually, if you follow that lifestyle, then probably in your 50s, in your 60s, you'll be able to write enormous, fantastic philosophy.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's a blessing and a curse. Sometimes the gnosis and the knowledge and the ideas that I follow, they just seem to flood to me, and I want to pursue everything. And and I know there's people out there that are good people that not necessarily follow these ideas, and they're studying the old traditions and everything, and they're just living a good life. They're living what we would say that the old traditions, the traditional way, even though they don't know it. and the philosophy of how they live is how you're supposed to live. You know, and was that kind of how you were meaning that a little bit?
Yes, because
Okay, sure.
for example, for me, it's much easier to talk to someone who has fought for their principles, and I listen to that person.
Of course.
Like to you or to other people, I can perceive that what they are saying has substance, has a lot of substance. And where on the other side, all the people who have just read the books of philosophy, I don't capture what they're saying. I don't understand. Sometimes they talk to me, I don't understand what they're saying. I don't get it. I don't see the context.
Sure.
You know, so for example, it's interesting when you for example, let's say you go to the beach and you do some exercises and you're just doing some working out with a guy who's super disciplined, doing the exercises, and you know, the kind of person you say, why are you doing this? No, because I just want to, you know, feel stronger. You know, just feel stronger. I don't want to look stronger. I want to feel stronger, you know. And you talk to this person and you can talk about all the crises going on today, and it's easier because they follow a lifestyle that is about, you know, feeling strong, especially understanding that the strength derives from our values. Yeah, and
Sure.
once you got that, you see everything with a completely different perspective. Everything around you, and I'm not talking about, for example, what you see in the news, but even something that happens to you in the beach. It's a completely different experience, completely different. And I think so. There are little traces of something that exist, as you said, in people. But they are not aware of how precious it is, you know, because another trick, let's put it this way, of mainstream media is to make you feel stupid because of that. You know, you've got something precious. You might not know who Plato was, who Socrates was, and you got all the, you know, if you see all the people who start having philosophical ideas or existential ideas in mainstream media, and they talk about all these people, sophisticated, you know, kind of conversation, and you who deep down have the fundamentals, you say, oh, I must be really stupid because I don't know these people. I don't know these people. I have not studied them. Yeah. Well, that's another. It's the typical trick of the salesman who wants you to sell something and makes you feel bad about what you got already, so you can update your gadget or whatever. You know, it's the same trick.
No, it's great you brought that up, Miguel, because I think there's people out there sometimes that might even be listening to us or me or to you or other philosophy where we'll bring up some of that. And it doesn't mean that they're less intelligent or, you know, we're better. It just means we're, you know, studied a little different gnosis. And I'm sure that we could learn something from you, and you're doing something out there. You know, whether that's be, as you had said, which I had found a lot of wise people who simply work with their hands, or they work on a farm, and, you know, they're just involved with their families. They're not involved with the, you know, the internet fake world, the virtual reality that the media and the, you know, the politicians want to bestow on us as they control our minds. You know, and they're living their lives, you know, and I noticed that, you know, you could be walking down the street and, you know, one guy is living in hell, you know, possibly he's doing drugs, he's having a divorce, you know, he's cheating on his wife, and then his whole marriage is falling apart. He's wanting to maybe kill himself. And then next door, the other person would be maybe that person, as you had said, on the beach, who just wants to be healthy, you know, and wants a good meal. And, you know, he's not living in that world. And literally each house, there's a kind of a different world going on in this world that we live, you know. And it's kind of, it's weird to me, the aspects that we're all just so divided and there's no community. That's what I feel, you know, if we keep going down this path. I don't know what you thought, if you thought about it. It's just like you have the internet and you have all these websites and you have all these channels. It just seems to be crowding out the light more than bringing it in.
Yeah.
You know, and you go on to Facebook and all these people are just copying things and putting things there, and it's kind of the same thing, even though I know you're on there and I am, because we have communities and we want to share the knowledge and, keep active and stuff, but it gets rather frustrating. I don't know exactly where I was going with this, but
well, I can tell basically. I like to say since many years ago, and I'm passionate. I love technology since I remember, science, physics, all this kind of stuff. But as I said, the problem is that technology provides you power. Especially, it's an architecture that can give an individual, a kid. You put a kid in a machine, and the kid has power. It's a means of power. So the thing is, it resembles very much a drug, because a drug can give you power upon your ego. The worst drugs. I mean, you were talking about alcohol a while ago, and there are many other drugs that basically reinforce the sense of ego, false ego, and technology can perfectly provide that drug. And it's nothing new to observe that people have a kind of high when they upload their ideas. Not their ideas. I mean, it would be great if they uploaded their ideas, but then the image of their ego to the internet, and
Sure.
and that's creating what, as you referred to, a kind of false reality, which is kind of a kind of mirages all around, where you see, where if you really like human substance, you see very little. Eventually, you see very little.
A copy of a copy of a copy. Yes. Sometimes, right?
Yes.
Sure.
So the thing is, I think that I'm not against the technological development. I think it's inevitable, but it's a test for ourselves. It's a test. It tells us, okay, you can. Let's say you can create a campaign in Facebook. Let's say you have the power to do it. You have the money to do it, and you create a campaign to do something that can really harm someone. You say, no, I'm not going to do it. But you can see that there's going to be a lot of people who do it. So it really, it's like a drug. It tests the best and the worst of us, and we have to use it. I mean, we're using it right now. It's just how it is. It's how the world works right now, and nobody told. I have a lot of in my writings. I talk a lot about this, but I think it's something that just is. You can say autonomous. I don't think there's nobody behind all this. Personally, I mean, but this is something that requires people to see the work so they understand it. But it's like, for example, nobody is behind the production of let's say some drugs that are they're just chemical products, biological products that are synthesized from nature and have produce a reaction in the human organism, which causes you a displacement of consciousness, in which you have to say, okay, where are my principles here? Because it's wavering, and you have to have your principles there. And if you have your principles there, it is when precisely technology serves you, not you as an ego, but it serves your higher principle. So I think in the times ahead, we are going to have a lot of challenges already, right now, even years ago. Those people who are going to be spiritual awakened are going to find means, technological means, to keep up the thread, the history thread. We don't know which are those means right now. Those who think that they can gain more power upon others or upon themselves through technological means, those are the people who are going to be controlled by great forces of all kind, which are mostly technocratic, corporate. I mean, just referring at that level, and then we could even talk about the level you talked about, the archons and all this spiritual influences and stuff. But in principle, the idea is how to transmit that lifestyle that was lost. and it's not easy, of course. I mean, I see today that I'm not a father, but I would, if I was a father right now, I don't know how you educate a kid in today's society. I don't know how you can do it. I don't know. I see it extremely challenging because on one hand, you want to transmit your principles, but it's going to be completely against society, the rules of society. So how can you educate? It's so challenging. How can you transmit something? I don't know.
I agree. You had talked about technology and how we're using it, and there's been various studies. I don't know them off the top of my head, but the amount of porn and the different things that people choose, or like when you go to Instagram and you have these various girls and young ladies showing their bodies and they're making millions of dollars. You talk about the ego, and literally all they're doing is showing their. I just see these pictures, and then they're literally flying all over the world, and they're living like kings and queens, and then you go to YouTube, and this just hypocrisy and just idiocracy, but that's what runs YouTube, and that's the algorithms, and they're making, little kids, you had said, they pick up the computer, and within a year or two, some of these kids are making 5-10 million. I think the highest paid one is, I think a little 8-year-old kid that makes like 25 million a year with little toys, as far, and so I just, it's what I don't like is that, these are the teachers that when my kids go online, and it's this weird dichotomy, Miguel, that you have the world, you have the teachings, like they have to homeschool, and you have the government protocols, and then you try to throw in a little spiritual. My technique to deal with that is to throw in it in a modern way, but also tying it to the old traditions. But they still think I'm crazy sometimes when I try to do that. It's just literally like, this is how the world works, and then my dad talks like this, and he must be crazy because he's the only one that talks like this. Do you kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's exactly the challenging I was gonna. I thought years ago about when you consider. I mean, one thing is a relationship. Another thing is when you have you're married. Married already is the compromise, also not with your spouse, but with your kids, and it was already challenging my mind, like saying it would be so conflictive. How can you transmit a way of allowing your kids to get to live a project of life by themselves, so they get to know themselves, so they get to know the beauties of life, because we live in this world that time, and we should not try to waste that time. How can you teach that in an environment where they're always encouraged to be dumbed down? They're encouraged, even in school. You can see there's some of my favorite authors who called Ivan Illich, who said it was the hidden curriculum, which is the disciplines that are, regardless of the subjects, is the kind of discipline that is imposed in the school and in high school. And you can see that there's a pattern of making the kids more and more influenceable by spectacular images, by colorful images, breaking their attention, the capacity for reflection, and they even get good grades by doing that, because they are doing the work with the according to the you can say the agenda that the school institutions have, even if they're not aware of it, but they have. And how can you oppose that? It's not opposing either. It's just, how can you? If I was a super king, I would say that children in general, would not be allowed to have, and I know this is going to sound very crazy, access to all these technologies which are until a specific age in which they are proven to have enough maturity.
Sure.
Because it completely dissolves their development in specific ages. And then it's kind of irreversible. And I've seen this along the years. I've seen that it's those are critical years, and it's like you are giving drugs to kids when they're not ready to have the responsibility about themselves. And I've been trying to tell this message for a long time, since I remember 2007 probably, and nobody listens. Why? Because it's just so comfortable to keep on doing the things. But now we're seeing the consequences of that. It's like when in the United States, I think probably you're very aware of this. They were giving sugar, in massive doses of sugar, and I think it was in the 70s and 80s. And nothing was going wrong. Everybody said, it's sweet. What's wrong with something sweet? And then that generation developed the most severe cases of diabetes in the world.
Yeah, and let me, I'm 49, Miguel, and I actually grew up in the 70s. So I grew up during that generation where my parents sat on the couch and drank Budweiser. We barbecued and did all that thing, but, where there was sweets and pretty much I had free reign, the hot dogs and the frozen burritos and crap. And I became that obese little kid. And then I developed an infection, I believe, at a young age, but I don't want to go down that route. But I believe a lot of these things, what do you feel about government systems, like as far as, here in America, and again, I don't know how it is there, we're pretty much a liberal society. As long as you abide by the laws, you could do whatever you want, whatever you please, and everybody kind of does that here. And we're all, divided and so forth, and more than ever. And, to the point where you don't even really talk to your neighbors and they look down upon you, and stuff like that. That's basically our world here. And then we're all fake on Facebook. But in any event, what do you feel about government systems? When I look at my family and then I look at our world, so I look at, we're all liberal, right? And we could do whatever we want. My neighbor could pursue whatever he wants to pursue, and I believe in that type of liberty. But in the same breath, there's no community. And then how I operate my home is more, when I look at it, it's communistic, meaning, we have a set rules in here and you've got to abide by them, and we share and everything here. And, my son could use my jacket, and, I'm doing the dishes, my wife will make the dinner, and I'm right there doing the dishes and helping out, and the kids are drying, or sometimes they're doing it. And it's the system, and we all have to put in, and we're all putting in our labor, and, my wife is helping and so forth. And I look at, how a good house operates, it's communistic. And then how a house that, my previous marriage would be more liberalistic, where we kind of did whatever we want. And there wasn't that commune where we were all doing things and sharing, and all had a responsibility, and we all did it. And I made sure, as the supreme leader, right, the solar leader of the house. And then also, I allow everybody, as long as they do those things that we all participate, to kind of have the liberty to have fun within a certain morals and ethics that we have. So so my question to you, what do you feel about going forward, how we can get to that point? Or are we just going to keep going down this liberal path to possible hell, and this is just the way it's going to go, and we're going to find ways to connect on the internet, and that's it, and try to save ourselves? Well,
Spain is is very politically different, and not only politically, but as I've observed when being over there, the political idea that in general American people have is different from the political idea here in Spain. I don't know, because Spain is where I know, and the idea of politics is basically the idea of how to here. It's not about political values. It's mostly about who becomes powerful, you know. But what I've observed in the United States, which is something I really liked, is that there is some, yet even considering everything that happened, there is still something there about the political ideals, not just about the idea that you got to just get into power and govern. You know, it's just about for example, the Bill of Rights, the idea of how important the individual is, that the individual is really deep down the seed of a society, what the individual, and this is, I've seen this in American people, I see it in you, what the individual does for himself, for herself, has political value. And you have all the rights once you are responsible with yourself. Now, what happened? The treason of liberalism, I'm not saying the liberal idea, but the ideology of liberalism, that is, okay, so the individual is so important that we have no responsibilities, but we have all the rights. You know, it's like a complete reverse of the precious idea that once founded the best of the United States, which I really appreciate. You know, I don't. There's many things on the United States that I think are crazy, like over here, but there are some interesting things about the American people that I think, you know, still are alive, and I believe.
No, I liked how you said that. That basically there's the idea, but the people are not following through. Some of them with their responsibility, and I know you weren't really. You know, I think that's an existential crisis here in America where we're not following through with those values, and you see them here getting slowly eroded by people that don't understand that history. And I don't know if it's some type of conspiracy. You know, you'll have people here, you know, around the world saying there's a conspiracy to take those rights that were given to us when this country was founded, and a lot of it was founded on Freemasonic ideals. A lot of
I agree with that, and but we also have to distinguish there that the Freemasonry, which is an interesting movement on itself, it had. There was a subversion that happened already in the 18th century, which I remark a lot in my books, which is that there was this, and I'm talking about here in Europe. In London, in 1707, was founded the speculative Freemasonry, which was a completely, a massive change that occurred in the idea, you can say the idea of how to govern societies and how to govern things in general. And that was unfortunately, that was the idea that was spread into the United States, unfortunately, very unfortunately, because the operative Freemasons, the former ones, who were the great architects of the Gothic period, disappeared. They were extinguished, and practically, if they lived in the United States, they had no political representation of any kind, you know, but they were living with a lifestyle over there. They just never had any political representation because, as far as I know, in the United States, you've got 65,000 lodges, Masonic lodges, something like that. I mean, spread all around the country. It's just something that is completely subversive. And many of the what happened with these Masons is that they transformed very, very subtly but powerfully the idea of the individual. First, the idea of the individual was the original pioneer who reached, you know, who reached United States from Europe and wanted to just have a land and gain knowledge through the land. You know, this was a very, very Gnostic idea, you know, even to how to understand nature, your immediate nature. But it was co-opted, that idea. This idea, by the way, was also shared by the Native Americans, you know, the idea of how to relate to the land. But that idea was co-opted by these Masons who migrated to the United States and transformed the idea of the individual to an ideological idea, which is individualism, which is it doesn't matter about you, it's about you related to a collective. And here is where we connect to communism. Here, in that tipping point, and many Americans don't want to recognize it, but when you transform the individual to individualism, you're shaking hands with communism. It's just like that.
So, yeah, let's discuss communism a little bit. There's different, when I research it, there's traditional ancient communism, which could be seen, say, let's talk in the Gnostic sense, the Essenes, the Pythagoreans, these different philosophical sects where brothers were united and they shared and they had each other's backs. And, if, say, you, Miguel, were part of my brotherhood, you came to my town, you were taken care of, you lost your job, made sure you were married and you died, we took care of your widow or whatever it might be. And it was basically this shared thing, and it was based on a set of morals and ethics and philosophies, rather than, just controlling. And to be part of these communities, you had to kind of step in line. There might be things that, I do personally or I like to do, and if I wanted to join in commune with this group or these philosophical ideas or whatever, I might have to adhere to their dogmas or whatever. So when I look at that, and keep in mind, I grew up in liberal America, do whatever the heck you want. I was a punk rocker as a young kid, and I did whatever I want, and that led me, I feel, to hell, and back again. And I've been through jail multiple times, prison, drug programs, different things. I've seen some horrific things, people killed, murdered, everything here in America as a result of that unhinged liberalism. And then I see what it does out there and what people pursue and what they do when they have the choice to go on the internet. And, you have to do this, and so there's this dichotomy where I believe in liberty, but there's also this part of me that I feel some people, they trample upon it and they don't understand what it means, and they're following a different God, possibly, than the God that we do, the God of light. So, and a lot of my teachings go into that, and I believe these people are controlled by who they would call in Christianity the devil, which I believe is this fungi type of hive mind God that's a parasitic type of thing, and I believe we could actually quantify that now. But in any event, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, about communism, I have tried in my work, by all means, to just break the kind of dichotomy between capitalism and communism. And I think that, for example, communism, if you were saying that it has specific origins which were very much related specifically to a fundamental idea, that is the value of someone, the economic value of an individual is based on what they produce. That was the fundamental idea. Now, when we talk about production, we're not specifically talking about industrial production. We can even talk about arts. We can, and what happened, and this was an idea that was implicit in many societies, even here in Spain, was very implicit, but we didn't call it communism. We just accepted it as something natural, that the product of your work, when you transmit your views, your spirit through your action, that has an economic value for you and for the people all around you. This was precisely the idea of the operative Freemasons, the architects of the Gothic period, which was a marvelous Disney World, you can say, period, here in Europe. The idea is that, look, forget it. No matter what I give you, all you're going to have in your life is the product of what you do. That was the maxim. Now that is and the product of what you do, it doesn't mean necessarily material. It's just kind of the resultant of our actions in life. It's a you can call it ethereal kind of result, but it's still there. you know. And the thing is that what happened is that, yes, you got different historical expressions of that idea applied to work in many different societies. Even, for example, it's interesting the case of Karl Marx, for example, who, even considering that he had a very economic perspective of things, exclusively economic, he had no idea of the different levels of degree of capacity of the human being, just considered that the work ought to be quantified in material in material terms. From there, he did some forces or some powers in the world, especially the Soviet Union, co-opted his thought and created Marxism. The ideology of Marxism, which is you are who you are based on how much you produce. Yeah. But we're talking about something different there, because you are no longer working with your hands. You're no longer doing something directly upon the materials. You're using a machine that you didn't produce, that you don't even know who produced. It could even be your enemy. And you're using it to produce something, and you're being paid by that. Well, that's a completely treason. It's a total treason to the idea that we were referring to.
Isn't that the whole internet economy right now, Miguel?
Sorry. Tell me.
Isn't that the whole internet economy right now? When you discuss Marxism, I literally just pictured everybody making all this money.
Taken to the total extreme,
Gotcha.
To the absolute radical. Now you see. I mean, for example, I know people who have made a lot of money with Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Okay, good for you. But just don't go around feeling good, like you're super cool about it. Okay? Yeah. Okay, sure. You did it, fantastic, but just there's nothing special about it. Mm-hmm. It's pure, because we know how it works, because the technology does this, because it's such a great system. Okay, justify it whatever you want. What did you produce yourself? Mm-hmm. Ask me this question. They have no answer. So it's kind of what I was just telling. Right now, things are getting so radicalized, so extreme, and everything is getting so mixed that we're losing the fundamentals, the roots of everything. And it's hard to even explain this to people. They don't even want. Sure. How can I explain this? I'm just telling you, to these people who've become rich with Bitcoin. Oh, they you know what they think? They say, look, you don't have anything to tell to me because I'm rich and you're not. Okay, good.
That was a perfect, you should be an actor, because does that happen in Spain as it does here in America as well? Or?
Well, it didn't reach so much because here we have, it's a different culture of because this is Spain in terms of the internet is of all the developments, or technological developments happening in the world, it's still slow, metabolizing all that stuff. Sure. But it's getting progressively at the same pace, especially the young people, and these are with who I have these conversations. Young people, I would say, from the 20s to 30s, and I say that it's as I said, it's something. Did you just speculated on that coin, and but that's nothing. I mean, it's the problem that's pure capitalism at its worst, because it's like, and this is what did you produce? Where's the real thing?
Yeah, and if you look at where the world's going, and you have all these people that aren't producing things, and then they're coaching other people how to do it, on how not to produce things, and it just seems like this 12th monkey effect, this copy of a copy, and I go online, and it's not getting any better. As our world is getting worse, it just seems to increase. So, when we start thinking about, the different ideas of liberalism and communism and fascism and everything, I just want to kind of explore that a little bit more. as far as the studies you've made. So we have this idea of liberalism, which of course here in America it's liberty, but I feel sometimes everyone shall not have liberty based on their not production of what they're doing. They're just not doing anything, and they're basically stealing from people and lying or being actors. And it's again the 12th monkey effect. And these are who my kids, when they go online, they might see this person and they talk real smooth, you know, because they learned how to talk that way from someone else, and they find their own little niche. And you know, these people are given the liberty to do that, and it when I look at it, I cringe. I feel like we're just going to hell, and these people are leading us there. And they're literally, they may be well-meaning, not bad people, hurting things, breaking the law, but there's the automatons, I feel. The people that are not understanding, and they're actually working for this hive mind that wants to take us to hell and keep the light from us. And so I'm wondering, do we just keep going down that route, or does it eventually get to the point almost where it's like we have a Pythagorean type of community where you can't talk for a certain amount of years until, you know, you're educated, and then we would like to hear what you say, Miguel. Not all of a sudden you go on the internet and everybody could have their website and do it and everything, and educate our children and corrupt their minds.
Yeah. Yes. Well, all these influences, it's kind of, well, at least my impression and some impressions I've heard from people I trust, well, it's like they make things so easy, you know. It's like it's how to do this, how to do it, how to be this, you know. So everything's so easy, you know. But but it's not so easy at the end to do anything. It's really difficult. But the thing is, I in terms of a general analysis, this is something I try to point out also in my books, which has not received enough attention, which is the fact that the planet as a whole, there were 7 billion people, and the resources are finite. You know, there's not enough. Already in 2018, there was the diesel maximum production. This is something official from the International Energy Agency, and so we're reaching limits to how much it can be extracted. So there is a law which I explain extensively in all my books, basically, because I really think it's an important law, which is the second law of thermodynamics. And let's say if you want to defeat this energy decline, you have to have more and more information of everything, and you have to have more, and this kind of, to some extent, oblige you, if you're in power, to control everything, so that you can make processes more and more efficient, and you can draw that surplus of energy that's so difficult to extract from the planet as a whole. And as a consequence for us as human societies is that, you know, it forces us to become more controlled, more policed, and have all our freedoms extremely restricted, because that way, that control feedbacks information into the system, and that system then outsources that information to whoever needs it, and makes all the process very smart. You know, we could go back into what smart really means, which is a military term, but it makes the process very smart. So this is the dilemma. If we want to keep on living the way we're living, with all the things we have and all the things we want to have, we have to be more controlled, more monitored by the powers that be. They know this game perfectly well, yeah, and they're trying to profit from it. That's the thing, of course. So I think that here, as the idea of liberty, not the idea of liberalism, but the idea of liberty is like saying, okay, I'm an individual. I know this is the game. I know this is the problem, the planetary problem, 7 billion people in a planet that just has very, very more material to offer. And if we want to keep on going on this path, we'll have to accept a restriction of freedoms. You know? So once you know that, okay, let's say, okay, so I know this, So I have to go another direction. I have to go another direction. This is not the direction I want. I don't want to be controlled, and I don't want to have all these things that I have not produced, but that I was a factor of production to make them happen. You know, so this is, for me, this is a very critical issue. That, let's say, if we want to keep on going this society and the values of the society, then we have to destroy our own values, because this society has no values. It's just as simple as that.
So it's interesting that you're saying that. It's as if we're building the very system that, you know, some of us might think, or where we're not thinking clearly, that will actually turn on them and identify them, so that, you know, we're all feeding these loops, and, you know, our tweets, and the AI is getting more knowledge, right, and more light, and understanding what's going on, and then identifying certain things, and then we're seeing the surveillance get more and more across the world, as if it's just like this organic thing, and then we're all connected, right? I'm connected to you in Spain right now. I'm talking to you thousands of miles away, you know, and then people are going to listen to this podcast and these ideas and so forth, and be connected. So what do you feel? Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, we are right now. We are being connected. We are connecting with. I'm talking to you, but this has nothing to do with the typical Twitter chat or the typical Facebook conversation. This is an eye-to-eye conversation, even if you're on the other side of the world, practically. You know, and this is the thing that should be favored. But it's, for some reason, people. I was shocked for many years that people don't want to Skype with me. They just want to chat with me by text. And it's like saying, well, you're favoring then the people who will co-opt all your data and who will co-opt all your information. And then don't complain eventually if you see that something weird happens with your profiles or something, you know. So I think it's as I said, right now I think the communication between people should be enhanced. The true communication, whatever means you have to use, but the communication should be enhanced. But it's interesting enough, what we're seeing is that communication now is being more and more restricted. The censorship in the internet is being extreme right now, and you can't even go to the streets. At least here in Spain, you have to wear a mask, but compulsory mask, so you can't even smile.
Yeah, that goes along with what you were just saying. Your theories were that we have to get more locked down, and our freedoms were gonna, you know, and that's already happening through all this stuff right now. And then you mentioned the censorship as well. It's as if, you know, the people that are pointing out those things, that, hey, our freedoms are getting taken away. You're gone. You know, they're getting taken away. So, you know, I see that, and I don't, you know, knowing philosophy and then understanding how political systems work, I don't try to go into that realm at all. I try to just kind of stay in my lane as I see what's going on out there, you know, because I don't want to get these freedoms taken away that I have and that have been given to me. So there's this thing, these triggers, these words, these lines of thought that you try to stay away from as a philosopher sometimes. Not that you want to not educate people or say the truth. It's like, we want to maintain these lines of communication without getting canceled out, without getting deleted or our accounts banned, where we can't be able to do this. And it's not about money to me. It's literally these connections that we make. And I've already decided, I've been doing this for 10 years and try to make money, try to do the, meaning not make money, but get donations and ways to fund the operation. And it's almost impossible in my eyes to do it in a good way. So I decided to make money with my business or however I want, and then do this on the side just for the pure love of it. But I wish I could do it, you know, full time. So what are your thoughts on where the world's heading with these, you know, various lockdowns? You you feel that, you know, in order for us to move forward, these liberties will have to be taken away, even though that's not what you want and that's what's happening. How far do you see this going?
Yes, well, you know, the future is not written, I believe. I think I truly, it's not that I believe, but I have verified that just a few particles can cause a butterfly effect if they want, you know, in the world, and that's precisely what those up there are really fearful about. You know, that's why they're doing all this censorship. You know, you know, it's like a war. In the war, it's like in chess. It's not about how many. You have to kill the king to win. You know, and this restriction of freedoms is because they know, when I say they, it's interesting because I know some people up there, and I know them because, curiously enough, they are the people who read my books. I mean, it's not the people you know, general people. It's them. I know that they're reading my books, and they've contacted me and they've given me feedback. They know all this stuff, you know, and they know perfectly well that they have to track down the dangerous guys. You know, it's the whole business because they know about this butterfly effect. They know about it, and they know how critical it can be for them. You know, because it's like in natural sciences, there are these points in the evolutionary systems that there's a leap, there's a bifurcation point, and there anything can happen in those points. Anything. It's not determined. There's no determination in those points. Then it doesn't follow any law, any physical law, any political law, and so that's I see that challenge happening now. Already it happened, and it's going to happen even more and more and more. I see that if people are not aware of the power of their freedom, of their liberty, because freedom and liberty, it's a different concept of their liberty, then there's going to be someone or some entity, some power structure that will provide that person a relief, as long as that person just does what is told by the media or by whatever, and everything is controlled that way, and then the whole planet can keep on destroying until the last drop of energy available. But life, as you can say, well, and eventually with this, human life is like that of an ant, and it's like saying, well, with all due respect to ants, but it's like saying humans should be a bit better than that, you know, and just constructing, you know, this kind of a thing. So I think eventually I think I've been observing the scenarios, and I think that eventually things are going to get more and more tougher, especially in this decade. And you can call it an awakening, but the more I would even say that it will get more and more weird situation, and weird in the sense that there's going to be more and more fictitious, not fiction, but fictitious and even artificial productions, so that we can justify our slavery. We don't know what's expecting us this year, but let's say an alien invasion is created, for instance, an alien invasion, and TV, yeah? Not something you can, there is the technology to create holograms that can be really amazing. Yeah. So let's say an alien invasion is created, and people must stay in home because of this alien invasion and stuff. Okay, there's going to be things like this, or a meteorite, for instance. You know, things like that. We're going to see weird and weirder things, and people have to be able to discern. Yeah.
Sure.
That's the issue.
Yeah, I also came to that conclusion that it's going to get much darker before we get better, and we have a long time to work through everything. And it seems like, these lockdowns and everything that's going, with the coronavirus, and here, being a businessman and then looking at all these businesses that are getting locked down, and then the domino effect from the people losing their job, and then the real estate. I go downtown San Diego here and I just see these sky rises and they're just empty and no one's walking around. And I mean, billions of dollars of real estate. And, all these people, the world's going to change, I feel, economically, and I see that. And it's almost as if there's something behind the scenes pulling the plug on the darkness and slowly making that happen. So we could say, it's completely dark forces, or maybe there's a light above controlling the dark forces slowly that don't even understand it, that they're being controlled. And in order for that world to come, it has to work its way through it. So you basically, like I do mold remediation, Miguel, and one of the things we do is we do demolition before, it's all moldy and gross, and the cabinet, and I got to go in there and build a containment and take it out and take it to the dump and have it buried. And then we have to, essentially surgically remove that and put a new one in, a new cabinet or a new piece of drywall. And then, that makes it to where it's not rotting. When I look at our world right now, and we have, a lot of things that we have built that are great, and then a lot of things that are rotting, so I feel like a lot of the businesses that are being locked down are those businesses, not all, of course, and I know there's a lot of good people that are losing their livelihoods and so forth, but there's a lot of businesses that are lumped in there that I feel that were not necessary, and the psychopaths were running them, and they were just for money, and stuff like that. So there's good happening in the carnage as well, but also, of course, there's going to be a lot of heartache and pain and depression and so forth from people that kind of don't understand, what's going on. So what are your thoughts there as far as the future on these businesses, the economic thing going on, and is there possibly some good light, and the sons of light that are possibly up there and going to control it and change our society into God's kingdom?
Yeah, that's something I just have to go, just have a walk around, my daily walk, and I can see businesses in the catering, restaurants, bars, and industry, and they're all being forced to be closed, and they just can't. It's just some economic processes of closure are just irreversible in most cases. There's no way back, and well, it's really sad because there's a lot of hardworking people with good intentions, just that didn't expect none of this. If they had expected it, they would have not just started the business in the first place. But they just are shocked, and I see a lot of psychological anxiety based on the fact that suddenly you thought that everything was going right ahead, and suddenly it stops. You never expected something out of nowhere, this invisible enemy, the coronavirus. Who could have imagined that something like that could have, you thought it could be just like a, like the seasonal flu, but no, it also closes your business. So this is something kind of shocking for most people, and I think it's sad. I feel it as sad because I know there's, of course, as you said, there are people who just, for example, even here in Spain, that just came up with all these franchises that were just corrupt, trying to take out subsidies for the government for whatever reasons, and all this kind of stuff. Very corrupt stuff, very psychopathic, you could say. And also, yeah, these are suffering, yes, but the average entrepreneur is also suffering without having, just doing a good work, and that's really sad for me to observe, because these are just people, as we were talking about, who want to live based on what they do and their work, and they just, so that's sad. But I I think looking at the global picture, it's going to get worse. I just have to say, it's just going to get worse. I mean, worse economically, worse socially. Restrictions of freedom are going to increase somehow.
Do you believe that as well is going to be because they're seeing crimes just going up like that in places here like in New York and San Diego, the drug use and the crime. So I would assume, as the economic crisis happens and then people lose everything and they can't cope with it and they maybe lose it and they do the crime starts just going like that. And of course the freedoms as well at the same time. And then we're having political unrest at the same time.
I would say that it would be interesting to observe how the system deals with criminality in this context. But I would say that already, the system is already criminal. It's already criminal. I mean, I've seen how politicians, I'm not going to say who, but I've seen how politicians are imposing a series of restrictions only on the little businesses, not in the big ones. Now, isn't that criminal? I think it's criminal. So criminality is not just it's inside already the structure of the system. It's like there are politicians who don't look like criminals, but they act like criminals in their decisions, and I think that is something that even is not convenient for this monitored and this is my opinion. Now I'm going to tell my opinion. I think this criminality is going to be, in that sense of political, is going to be completely eradicated because it's not efficient. It's not efficient, and this system, what it needs right now in the years ahead, is efficiency because of the resource problem of the planet. It needs efficiency. It needs centralization. It is going to completely erode all local and regional governments, even national governments, and it's going to completely erode them because they're unnecessary. So how that criminality can be handled by the whole global system, that's an interesting thing. I don't know exactly how it's going to work out. Because there is, I know what I'm going to say is not politically correct, but there's a lot of criminality in the political system because I've seen things that are not for the benefit of those who voted for these politicians, or for the basic fundamentals of the economy and lifestyle. And then there's a lot of other aspects involved with, well, all kind of illegal activities like drug traffic and all this kind of stuff. That's completely another story. But just observing how laws are being passed here in Spain, I can say there's a lot of criminality even in the political system. And as I said, how this is going to be handled by the technocratic powers worldwide, I don't know. I have no idea. But probably it's going to be the same as we've just witnessed. The creation of a state of anxiety, general state of anxiety, so that you can observe in the political arena who are those politicians who follow your idea and those who are just not following it, so you select them. It's kind of, I think that's going to be the strategy, but let's see.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, politics will definitely have to play a huge role moving forward. As you had mentioned, here in the United States, we have our politicians in the Senate, and they set the laws, but they're highly influenced by the lobbies and basically these corrupt psychopathic corporations that give them money to fund their campaigns. And then of course when their laws go through, you'll see a law go through and then it'll have all these 30-50 other things sending money to here and to there, and you realize when you're looking at it, these are all the corporations that funded these politicians. So they make sure that money, us slaves, us plebs, we pay for those favors for them, and a lot of it works against us in the long run. And that's been happening for years here, and it continues to happen. It's almost a joke here in the United States. I don't know there, but here we talk about it, and it's just the same thing over and over. And of course, you have the media, people that think they're patriots, and then you have Trump on the media, and then he's basically instructing them to go to the White House, and they storm it. And that was probably the most stupid thing that those people could have done at that time. But they're now even locking it down further. Washington, now they're going to put a permanent fence and so forth, and have troops there possibly, and if you think about it, the FBI, the NSA, all these people that were, possibly wanting to overthrow the government, which essentially when you break into the Senate House, that's what you want to do. They now have them, and that could have been all just a play, to get them to do that. Who knows? Because sometimes you'll see here, the different politicians, they're all friends, and they play enemies and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and they're all on the same team.
Yeah, it's like it's the same. It's interesting because it's the same pattern, and it indicates a problem of political representation. If one of the things that I see that is different in our times from previous eras, even in the times of the First and Second World War, which, well, I didn't live it, but I have grandparents who lived it, and I have in the war, all the kind of war situations, and also at that time there was something interesting. The power of the lobbies you were referring to wasn't so powerful. I mean, it was just the states, the nation states, at least here in Europe, still had a degree of autonomy in regard to these techno-industrial powers. In the United States, the thing started a little earlier than here in Europe. Here in Europe, and this is what really drove the reaction in Italy and Germany, and even a bit in Spain, of the national, fascism. I don't know how you say fascism, fascism, and yes, and which was a kind of reaction to all those influencing powers, industrial, technocratic, you can say, which was kind of lobbying inside the countries. But at that time, I have to say that in Europe, there was still some political representativity. I mean, it was the politician represented the best it could the state. That existed still at that time. Now, since the 1950s, things changed. The whole chessboard changed, and since then, the politicians are not representing the real state of affairs in terms of power. They're not representing that anymore. But they are still a kind of incarnation of the popular will in democratic elections. So it's a kind of a complicated situation there, because you are voting theoretically for those who can solve your problems, the problems of your nation. Even if you have a very patriotic feeling, you expect the problems of your country to be solved. But those you are voting for, like in the United States, who are all, as you said, the Senate is completely lobbied, those people have no real power. Have no real power to really make the change, because the real power is from the industrialists, the technocrats, the corporate system, all this conglomerate that is so complex. How can you explain this? Even how complex the whole system is. It's not just like
Maybe we could, though. Maybe the simple, I don't know if you are you religious at all, or did you grow up any kind of religious tradition?
I was brought up as Catholic, a Roman Catholic.
Mm-hmm. So you'll be okay. So you would be familiar. I'm sorry to interrupt. So you would be familiar with the satanic principle and the story of Satan. And,
yeah, of Lucifer. If it's the same, I don't know.
well, it would be more of like Satan, and
Okay, okay.
it would be the story of maybe when, Peter is talking, and I might not have it completely right, but he's talking with Simon, and Simon essentially offers money for the priesthood, to get into the priesthood at that time. And they basically, Peter goes, "Get behind me, Satan. You're the ways of Satan." So essentially at that time, that was considered a satanic principle to do that. So if we could just break it down to the myopic religious teaching through Roman Catholicism, that would be considered that. And then that was called simony. We have a system that is based on Satanism. So it's a satanic system. So that's how I feel that I know you say it's complex, but it's not really when we think about it.
It's really not. It's just how to describe the whole structure of power. I've tried.
Of course, yeah.
But it's really difficult. What I do know is that, for example, years ago there was here in Spain, at least, there was a regional politicians in Catalonia and other regions from Spain, who were very, very. They were accused eventually of sending all their money to paraísos fiscales. How do you say? Havens, financial havens around the world, and it was a very controversial aspect at that time in the media. But let's try to put ourselves in the position of these politicians at the time in the 70s or in the 80s. They, for example, in Catalonia, at that time was very powerfully growing at an industrial level. It was one of the most powerful areas of industrial growth in Spain since the dictatorship. So what happened is that there were people in power who had to pass laws, politicians who were offered enormous amount of money from all kind of different industrial sectors, lobbies, you can say, to say, look, we want to implement all our industry in this little region, and we need you to pass the laws, so we can have all the jurisdiction capacity to do all what we want, as if it was our country. This was the industry. So there was all amount of different players who were paying the regional politicians to say, look, I want to be the first. I want to be the first. I want to be the first. And they were paying. So eventually the politician was just being lobbied, at that time. And the thing is, what is the corrupt aspect I see here is that then this politician, who was already in power because he was put in power basically by the lobbies, then goes on TV and says to the Catalonian people that he is looking for the interest of the Catalonian people, that he is looking. Absolutely a lie, total lie. You expect that a politician would not tell lies, because if it has some moral integrity, the politician has to tell the truth, at least it is ideal. And however, this politician appears in the media and tells that he is like the supreme power in that region. Absolutely false. So that's the seed of corruption, the seed of what you were saying, that kind of devil, demonic, or simoning thing, that is basically when you appear publicly just to use demagoguery, to be a treason to what you know, and to deceive people in general. That's the whole thing. And I would say that this was already happening in the 70s, in the 80s. Imagine how it's happening now. Yeah. I mean, here in Spain.
If we look at it, Miguel, and again, if we kind of go back to, like, say, the revelations of St. John and the Apocalypse, and sometimes I like to tie in a little religious tradition because I feel that's important, and I feel that there are some powerful spiritual forces out there around the world when you look at, whether it's Orthodoxy, the Greek Orthodox, the Russian Church, the Orthodox Church. You have the archons in Greece. You have the Roman Catholic Church, and then you have all these churches, and then they're talking about fraternity and uniting, and you're seeing these different things happening. Do you feel possibly that, maybe through the powers that be, through these religious institutions, that some powerful people say, like in Russia, I know Putin is close with the Orthodox Church, and he has brought that tradition back to that country. I don't know, maybe in Spain, they have a strong Catholic tradition still tied in with government. Here, we're mainly secular, but is there a possibility that maybe these people will be taken out, and this next 10 years we'll see almost like the apocalypse, because these truths are coming out, we're talking about them, and other people are talking about them, and they're seeing them, and the light, even though it's getting oppressed, it's still being seen, and we're seeing all this happening. And then I see almost as if the good people, unfortunately, getting taken out, as the tares, they say at the end, are taken into the barn and burned or whatever. And I see almost people doing that themselves because they don't understand these spiritual traditions and these principles. And that the fact that we live in the year 2021, I was like, do we go through certain periods or ages or cycles where we are allowed a certain amount of time, and there's maybe, again, a hidden hand or something, a powerful force that is, wise and benevolent, and they have seen, and they allow certain things to happen, and now they decided enough is enough. It's time to end it. It's time to, these devils and these demons that have these positions of power, they're definitely dangerous, and you don't just give them a press release, but it's slowly unwinded, and the power is taken from them over a certain amount of time. So that's where I feel my philosophy is going. It's either going that way or we're going completely to hell, and we're all going to kill each other. It's like it's one or the other. That's what I feel we're going to. And then part of me, based on these ancient traditions, feels that the powerful forces, and some of even the dark, are converting to the light and understand this crisis that the world and humanity is facing, and that they're not going to let us go to hell, and they will step in, and that's happening now, even though we don't know it. And of course, there's not going to be a press release to the people in power that are controlled by money or whatever selfish deeds, and they're all in it for themselves.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know what those. Yeah, in terms of in general, what I've perceived is that in at least here in Europe, most of the elite, let's call it that way, have some link to the Catholic Church or to some kind of ancient order,
like royalty or knighthood,
yes,
kind of.
yes.
Okay. Would you say the lineage in Spain and the government is tied to this ancient royalty?
I don't know. I have no idea. In Spain, I mean, the government, I have no idea. But at least in the books, it's tradition. There was a more, let's say, even 100 years ago, there was more Catholic tradition passing
with
down
royalty and so forth,
especially from the royalty.
Sure.
But the thing is exactly how that tradition is lived by the people, and how they keep it up. If it's just a set of symbols, or if it's something they feel inside. That's the great question. It's like what many for example, there are some authors, I could tell, for example, René Guénon or some others, who really pointed out the difference between the esoteric aspect with S and the exoteric aspect with X, with an X, of the religions. And if there is an esoteric with S in some of those groups, that would be great, because that they could take they could take good decision at a political level. Now, if it's all exoteric with an X, which means basically to use those symbols as clothing. We can't expect nothing. So I think I don't know. It's so complex up there, and I think that really right now the idea is to provide to people an idea of the chessboard, what's going on, and not expect nothing from anyone, but just from themselves. Because it's just, if we look back, it's been a long time which we expected a lot of things from the political sectors, and recently we're discovering a lot of things about these people on which we deposited all our trust. So I think I don't know. Just looking back, there's not a lot of good record, track record of the people in power in general. That doesn't mean that obviously there might be some individual in position of power who contact you, who contact me, but they will do it personally, not from a political action level, because they can't do it. They just can't do it that way. They're just too constricted. Like, it won't happen that way. It will happen more as a private conversation or something like that. But it won't happen in terms of decision, political decision.
It's too dangerous.
Yes. Just looking at the whole context, the interplay of things.
Of course. And I see, Miguel, you're a little bit careful with your words, and I thank you. Here again, I'm in the United States. We have a tendency to be more liberal about what we talk about, and even politics, and people don't understand the dangers that go in there. And I do, doing this for actually 12 years now. I've had several incidents in my life, and different things happen where I believe I said things that I shouldn't have said, and things happened with my business or my internet, and my house was broken into at one time, my laptops, and that was literally a day after I had said something disrespecting, I believe, the powers in a powerful way, and they came and showed me a lesson. So I believe 100% that we definitely live in a monitored and controlled world, but I'm also feel that this concept of liberty here in the United States of America and the Freemasonic ideals, that there are powerful forces out there that are there for the light, and it's going to be more on the butterfly effect, as you had said. And I feel it's like this, and talking to people and people hearing these podcasts as well, and these ideas, and them living their lives in a more traditional moral way, or whatever, however they choose to pursue their liberty, or whatever country that they're in. And I know we went a little bit over time here, Miguel, so thank you. Is there anything that you would like to, close this conversation off with, to end it with the audience? Anything that maybe we didn't talk about that you would like to convey? And then also anything you want to say in regards to your website, and letting people know where to find you?
Well, basically, we were talking about the challenges we've already faced, and we're going to face. They're going to be more and more strict, more and more challenging, more and more difficult in the following years. But I think it's also good to realize that one of the great things of the human condition is that difficult situations always bring out the best and the worst who we are. So it's like saying, okay, that's the rule. I don't like to talk about laws and rules, but if you look back, generally the human condition has generally been its greatest in the most difficult situations. It's precisely in those times when everything is so comfortable, where everything is so easy, when you don't see the best of the human condition. So if we truly want to see the best of the human condition, I would say that, hey, let's embrace challenge. Let's face it. Let's be true warriors, not the warriors you see on Instagram, but the real ones who want to face challenges because they know they have something that is indestructible, and they want to see it. And I say that that's basically, if you got that, who cares about everything else? You got what's needed, and that's what these people up there, sectors, I would say, not people, individual sectors, are trying to take out of us, because it's the butterfly effect. They're interfering in any moment. It can really it can really destroy them. So the thing is, let's just do our homework with ourselves, with the people around us, with our family, with our girlfriend, with our sisters, our niece, whatever, whoever, people. Let's just be who we are, and that's going to be the subtle work we'll need, because it gives us a self-realization of who we are, who we truly are, and that experience is you, and that will be more and more manifest as the years go by. So the only people who are really going to fear the challenges are those who are fearful about the lack of gnosis of themselves and of the world. Those are the people who are going to fear the change. But those who know who they are, like say, embrace change. They want to embrace everything, difficulty, challenge, everything. This is something. So I want to transmit this message, to people in general. That's why I produced some years ago the website with all the books and all the stuff. But as I said, it's something that the letter kills the spirit. So finally, I think people can read my books and I say, okay, very interesting, very interesting. Yeah, but did you see anything of you in them? Well, no, not really, but it was very interesting. Okay, well, okay. Very interesting. But did it change your way of doing things, of seeing life? Or no, not really, because I don't have much time. Okay, well, you don't have much time. Okay, well, you're going to have less time. less time. So I would, that's my message, just to focus in our lives the best we can, just to be humans. Humans, not in the good sense, I mean, not in the pathological or psychopathic sense. That's
Yeah.
it. And if we do that, everything shall work out. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking from experience, from someone who I believe has went down sometimes those psychopathic ideological routes here in America, and making mistakes, and then also being asleep to the world, and being one of those people that I sometimes would not look down upon, but who I feel are what's wrong with our world and our society, and then in the same breath, people need to understand that you got to put the work in, or else it's just a bunch of, it's just fake. And I believe that, whatever you do, that you try to put this gnosis, maybe you took some things from what Miguel said here at the end, or myself, or whatever you listen to, and you try to apply them to your life, and you actually be a doer. And you become, I believe, by doing that, and then also being real and getting off these virtual reality tunnels that these people want to put you on, and get in the real life with your family, or it's just outside and taking a walk and being around a dog, or your grandparents, or whoever that might be, because that's the real world. Sometimes we get stuck in this virtual reality, but in the same breath, this virtual reality seeks to almost like gobble our children, their ideas, and transmit them into their mind, and possibly these ideas can take them down the wrong route. So my thing is take the good ideas, try to apply them to your life, and try to be a doer, and don't just sit there and not do anything with this information. And again, a lot of people will not, but there will be a few that will. And it took me time to do that. So I think in some people it's due time, some people will never do anything, and then there's people that will be activated by your words.
Yeah, and let's consider this, because this, for example, in all this conversation we had, if there is someone out there who's still listening to us, even if it's 2 or 3, It's an interesting sign for them that they've reached to this point of the conversation, because today in the internet everything just lasts 4 minutes, 5 minutes. It just doesn't work if it doesn't go beyond that, you know.
Sure.
So if someone is right now still listening to us, it means this person, you know, there is some attraction, some interesting aspect that this person will work out, who knows by which means eventually. But it's a good sign that person can keep up their attention still.
2 hours, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree.
exactly.
Yeah, this is definitely odd, and I like the long form conversation because, you know, first time talking to you with Miguel, I got to know you really well. I thank you, and then other people as well. And hopefully some of you made it to the end of this conversation. But for those people that have, where can you direct them to if they want to learn more about your great work?
Well, I have this www.thesolarwarrior.com website, which is essentially for presenting my books, essays, novels, and then some introductions that are available. It's as simple as that, and that people can contact me through that website as well, through email or even through Facebook. I still have an account there. I still have one.
Cool. Me too. Yeah, it's awesome, Miguel. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you coming on the Gnostic Warrior.
It was great to be with you, to talk with you, and very, very great conversation.
I agree. Take care, buddy.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.